Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? But what's the best game where you play a dead guy? You'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this your podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a specific category. For example, this week, we're looking for the best game that uses that FMV that was all the rage in the 90s. Did you write this from the perspective of a Yorkshireman, Tom?
Yeah, I was trying to be quite colloquial, in terms of the phrasing.
The best game that uses that FMV that was all the rage in the 90s. I will refrain, for the sake of everyone's sanity, from mispronouncing FMV as FOOM for my own amusement. I just wanted to get one in there. FMV games, interactive movies, or FOOMs, whatever you want to call them, were once considered the future of the medium until people realised that they were actually quite limited and fairly one note. And despite still being championed by a few diehard proponents, the format is now generally considered to be a load of dithering old nonsense whose best days are well behind it. Speaking of which, I'm joined today by Editor-in-Chief Tom Orry. We're also joined by Associate Editor Alex Donaldson and Guides Writer Kelsey Rayner. How you all doing?
Good. You cut me off. You quickly cut me off before I have a chance to respond.
Yeah, exactly, because you always come in and ruin my flow and I need to get everything out. So we've got some interesting picks today. I want to start with Donaldson, right? Because you just sent me your pick. And I had about 5 minutes to look over it. It's the ropiest looking shit I've ever seen. Please, Alex, explain what you've brought to the table today.
It's fabulous. It's great. It's a PC and it's on iOS as well game called Contradiction: Spot the Liar, and it's a terrible name for a game, but it is also it's also known as Contradiction: The All Video Murder Mystery.
Right.
It's basically like a shit FMV Phoenix Wright game. So you play as a character called Detective Inspector Frederick Jenks.
Right.
And he basically goes to a small village in the UK to investigate the death of a young woman. Yeah. And you are interviewing people around the village. And all this was filmed in Cheshire and Lancashire here in the UK.
I think we need to establish this is the most British video game ever made.
Oh yeah. So it is. You're basically going around this town interviewing people. I want to say the guy behind the game is a guy called Tim Follin, and Tim Follin is mostly known as a video game composer. He composed a lot of music for a lot of those old UK developed video games going back to the 80s. So he was involved with some of the Lemmings games, and was involved with the Amiga version of Ghouls and Ghosts and Rock and Roll Racing on the Super Nintendo. And so he's actually got, and then a lot of random stuff. He did a lot of licensed stuff. So some of the Batman and Robin games and some of the South Park games. He did the Dreamcast Echo game.
Okay.
Did the music for that.
So this guy had a perfectly good career, and then he decided to do this.
Well, so here's the thing I want to say. Contradiction is ropey and cheap and a bit crap, but it's wonderful. It's just fantastic. The murder mystery is actually genuinely kind of interesting. And what you basically have is a bunch of British actors who are sort of the level of amateur local theatre, giving it their absolute all. And
I think most of them could probably get on a daytime ITV drama.
Yeah. They probably, some of them have probably been on Doctors,
Yeah, it's that level, isn't it? It's same lighting as well.
Yeah. And speaking of Doctors, the thing that I think you would enjoy, Jim, in particular, is the guy who plays the main character, who plays Detective Jenks, who's a guy called Rupert Booth. Rupert Booth is just he's been involved in a lot of low-level, cheap film stuff, but the lion's share of the low-level...
Do you say sheep films? Sheep films or cheap films?
Cheap films.
Not sheep films.
Not sheep films. He's not Welsh. Most of what he's been involved in a lot of stuff, but the common thread that runs through most of his stuff is he's done a lot of like Doctor Who adjacent stuff.
Right,
he was one of those people that was heavily involved in like fan TV
I was
series.
just saying, he's one of those
wilderness.
people who made those weird, like, not Doctor Who fan things. Where
during the wilderness years.
Yeah, they somehow like got the money together to hire Colin Baker to show up in a suit.
Totally. Like you know, like a short fan film called "Do You Have a License to Save This Planet?" he was in, and it's like it's got autons and.
I always get worried, Alex, when you say the words, "Oh, you'll love this, Jim," because I don't know where you're ever going to go with it. And
honestly, well, the thing about this guy is his performance is wild, and the thing I'm getting at talking about him and his Doctor Who connection is what he's doing with this Inspector Jenks.
Yeah,
is he's basically playing what his version of the Doctor would be. Absolutely, 100%. Down to wearing a really silly, poor idea of a hat.
It's like a shit hat, yeah.
Big long coat. Sort of has that Tom Baker, David Tennant sort of wild gurning, and he's really
wearing a big floppy hat and he's swishing about in a big coat. And for 99% of the population, that is Doctor Who in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's got that sort of his acting and it being so wild. And this is the thing. It's a deliberate choice, you can tell. So although it's slightly crap, you can tell he's not doing this out of obliviousness. You can tell he's deliberately trying to make this character slightly wild. And this combines with the video game aspect for, you know, you get those clips of L.A. Noire and you're in the interrogation and the prompt is something like relatively benign, like, you know, challenge, and then you press challenge and he's accusing someone of being a nonce and it's out of nowhere. And a lot of people pressed challenge on that thinking it was going to be like, were you really there on this date? And the guy screams in his face. And L.A. Noire's famous for that, right? And this game has a lot of that where you press, it's not like that, it's not accusing people of being pedophiles, but it's a lot of the guy who plays Jenks, like you press something relatively benign and then he's like screaming or gurning or doing something completely bonkers and off the wall, and you're like, what even is this character? And like I say, it's just, I absolutely love it because a lot of FMV games, they're either super high concept, and obviously, you know, you've got Immortality come out, right, which I assume is what inspired Tom.
I just ripped off Jim's suggestion.
You've got stuff like that in Her Story and things. You've got super high concept stuff there, and then you've got like the stuff like Sewer Shark from the 90s where it's guys in front of a camera and it's really grainy footage and they're going whoa all the time. This is sort of a beautiful, unique thing where it is this just fabulously British. A lot of the footage in this wouldn't be out of place in a terrible slot on really in the middle of the day.
It looked like when I don't know, like when This Morning does a sort of crime reconstruction or something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I love that it despite all that, it is slightly ambitious in the sense that so it takes place over the course of 7 hours, right? So they've had to shoot the plate shots for every location in the game for each hour for the movement of the sun, and then some of that's really well done. Some of that they clearly ran out of time. So they've shot the background at the correct time of day, but the characters have been shot against the green screen and then superimposed. Sometimes they're really there at the correct time of day. And it is basically just an adventure game where you're walking around, finding evidence. And as the name suggests, what you're doing is you're going around and pointing out people's contradictions, which is exactly how Phoenix Wright works. So you find a small contradiction in someone's story that is really unrelated to the murder. And by pointing out that contradiction, they give you a bit more information that allows you to go to someone else. And it's a fun little adventure game. And the thing is, if this was like a sprite art game, if it looked like Monkey Island, people would just go, oh, that's a solid 7 out of 10 adventure game. If
this didn't look like shit, it would be better, is what you're saying.
No, but you see, you've gone the wrong path there. Because what I was going to say is if you had this stuff and it looked like Monkey Island and it was a standard issue point and click adventure game, you'd be like, this is a nice, fun, 8 out of 10 adventure game.
But because they've marshaled
this, is the combination of the ambition, the fact they made it for the Kickstarter had a goal of £3,000. It ended up making £4,000
this as well. Jesus,
people love FMV stuff, don't they? And
it's true. Now Tex Murphy got funded, right?
Yeah, and this ended up gaining a bit of a cult following because there was a Let's Play on a big video game website on Giant Bomb where those guys are just constantly crying with laughter at it, basically, because it is sometimes good acting, sometimes bad acting.
They were doing that weird kind of American thing where somebody says the word driving license in an English accent and it sends them over the edge of hilarity for about 10 minutes. It's the most benign.
This is Americans.
Like, they're acting like he said he like demanded a portion of spotted dick when he just like alluded to a piece of identification. All right. Okay, cool.
This is terrible, that game.
It sounds terrible. It does sound terrible.
I adore it. I recommend
what you've
everybody
done is, once again, someone on this podcast always goes off brief, and I would remind you, Alex, that the brief was not shit game with FMV.
No, like I said, genuinely, I consider myself something of an FMV game nerd. I really enjoy FMV games. I'm the guy who has like a pretty much complete collection of Sega CD games. So I got Night Trap and I think
you're being blinded by your love for Doctor Who, and this is like the entire.
No, I just think this guy. You are correct in one sense, in the sense that that guy, that protagonist, makes this entire experience.
Yeah, but I think he's the sort of person that only the Doctor Who fandom could produce. These sort of weird people who somehow get funding to cosplay with actual Colin Baker in the woods.
What I love about his appearance in Contradiction is it's made him like a FMV game celebrity. So in recent years, we've had quite a lot. In recent years, we've had quite a lot of FMV game revivals. In part, I would say Contradiction, which came out in 2015, is probably one of the games that kicked that off.
It's definitely having a bit of a renaissance.
He's never spoken as much about a game at all in this podcast.
I'm gonna have to cut him off.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite FMV game. So I just want to
ask one question. Apart from the fact, like I said, it sounds like shit. Obviously, did you find this game on a Doctor Who forum, like a message board?
No, I found it. I discovered
you found it on Outpost Gallifrey.
I discovered it through the Giant Bomb Let's Play, and I enjoyed the Giant Bomb Let's Play so much and found it so funny. I then bought the game and played through it all on my own time as well.
I tell you what, I am reasonably surprised because I was absolutely convinced that Alex was going to come here and twist the definition of FMV game to include like all the Final Fantasies that have like video backgrounds.
I thought Command & Conquer. I thought it'd definitely be Command & Conquer.
Command & Conquer did cross my mind, but I don't. It's not really. I wanted to pick an actual FMV game, and similarly, I've considered picking Resident Evil 1 just for the opening cinematic.
We need to move on. But you did allude to the fact that FMV has had a massive resurgence recently. Kelsey, your pick.
Does PT have FMV in it? I didn't know.
It does if you record it, right?
All right.
Yeah, what's your pick, Kelsey?
Immortality. Shock. Horror.
I mean, literally.
It's suitable to talk about it. I am going to speak about it tentatively because obviously Jim hasn't finished playing it, and I assume quite a few other people haven't even got around to playing it yet.
Yeah, which they should.
But Immortality is obviously Sam Barlow's latest FMV adventure, and it follows model turned actor Marissa Marcel, who starred in 3 films from the late 60s to the late 90s, I think. But none of the films were ever actually released or finished for whatever reason. So that then thrusts you, the player, into this position of basically playing detective, sifting through all this footage from the films, behind the scenes, studio rehearsals, interviews, and more, to basically figure out what happened to Marissa Marcel. I chose this game based on atmosphere alone, solely because I've played a few FMV games, not as many as I'd like, but I walked away from that game feeling like it had got under my skin. And that was what made it stand out from other FMV games so much to me, because I've walked away from other experiences like that and been like, yeah, okay, I appreciated what that was trying to do. Or in Alex's example, that was hilarious. Like hilariously bad. But Immortality it creeps you out. You start playing this kind of detective-like role, and paired with the DualSense controller, as you match cut these clips, it uses this sort of moviola mechanic to rewind back and forth through the clips, and it feels like you're actually there using that device. So instantly you're immersed in that way. And then because it kind of sinks its claws into you near enough immediately, everything else after that, but again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but everything else after that is so much more hard-hitting, which is why you walk away with that feeling of that was amazing, but that's not something that I'm going to be able to let go of for quite a while. I wish I could say more.
Are we declaring like the sponsorship from like PS5 on this, or like it sounds like it's just
I'm obsessed with it.
Are you just been paid off? The DualSense, is that good? It felt like you. What was it? What was the machine?
Moviola. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but yeah. Well, you would have had the same effect on any other controller, I guess, but...
Other controllers are available.
Other controllers are available, but the DualSense just hits different. But, yeah.
I've only played like an hour or so of it. I haven't, like, as you say, I haven't finished it. But we've been chatting about it, and it's like... The thing about Immortality that sets it apart is that it's so well produced. It's got such a clear vision and like the budget to carry it out. So at no point are you taken out of the experience by it being ropey, which happens in every other FMV game.
Yeah, it's just so well executed.
That game, because it's all, as you say, it's like it's all about the atmosphere, and it's all like it has to creep you out, and you have to feel like you're sat in a dark room going through this footage to really be fully sold on the idea. And if at any point the footage was bad or descended into like, you know, hokiness, it would be shattered. It would be done, and it never happens. You're absolutely like sucked in.
I think when I was talking to you about it, you said the idea of you could probably piece together any of these films and watch them as standalone films and be quite impressed by it.
Yeah,
which is, like you said, it removes that ropiness from it. So it's an FMV game where you can take every sort of second of it seriously.
Yeah,
which is why it's able to make you feel the way that you feel.
Yeah.
Jim's quality bar is very low, though. I mean, he watches some terrible stuff. So
no, I don't.
I mean, I'm sure this is much better than some of that, but it's not saying much.
My question is how much is quality an important factor of an FMV game?
Quite a lot.
Well,
it depends on what that particular game is trying to do.
I suppose so. Yeah. This game is great. Don't get me wrong, but for me, a big part of FMVs, I always like it to be a bit. Even Command and Conquer, when they had the EA budget, it was always slightly shaky and messy.
So that's the thing. Like, you can appreciate a game like that. That's why I've walked away from some of the FMV games that I have, which haven't been great, but I've been like, that was fun. That was good. But Immortality is different. It's just a different ballpark in a sense that it's so serious. There is no ropiness that it almost feels like a new peak for FMV games. Like, not every FMV game needs to be like that, but it's so good that someone has done that and shown how good these games can actually be.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, like you were saying, when Alex raised that point, it's not that it has to be like quality is a consideration for the entire genre, but for this game in particular, it's integral to the whole thing, and it does absolutely set it apart. Like it's a quality product, and this genre does not produce quality products by and large.
Yeah, I walked away surprised. It was...
Yeah. Like, one of my favourite FMV games I played when I was a kid was the Tex Murphy series, which used FMV, but only when you were in the conversation system. Other than that, it was like a 3D, like, first-person investigation game. It was crap, but it was quite restrained in how it used the FMV because it didn't have a budget to make it look good. And I think, Tom, your pick is in that sort of vein, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I went for a game that was peak or like era. FMV is a big deal. We've got ambitions way beyond our means.
Yeah,
so
way beyond their talent as well.
This game actually was very well made. So 1996, Gremlin Interactive, who they were like a fairly big deal back in the 90s, probably before then. Realms of the Haunting is my choice. It's a PC, like DOS, back when DOS was a thing still. And it is essentially it looks a bit like a more impressive Doom clone. But it's a first person shooter with point and click mechanics and puzzle solving, and FMV. It's very ambitious for the time. Like, I remember playing this thinking like, this is not like anything else I've ever played before. Because this is like, you think back 1996 was games were quite simple still, really. Like you had games that were like shooters, you had like point and click, you didn't have much that did all this stuff. You like mentioned Tex Murphy as like a thing that did more. It wasn't just FMV. This is like that, but I think it's beyond that in terms of what it tries to do. Like the shooting is good. It's got like this horror feel, like it's a horror game essentially. Like
it's a hammer horror.
So it has the FMV is not. It's not an FMV game as such, but there's a lot of FMV in this game. Like if you watch the trailer, it's basically just FMV. They're selling it on with a bit of the game footage, and it's got that classic, this like of the time. Like it's got like a 5 or 6 minute intro that you sit through with this guy. He's in a taxi and he's talking about his dad who's died, and he's been having these visions of this house and these visions of this woman, and he's been drawn to this house for some mysterious reason, and he has some kind of, I can't remember what it is, like a medal or something, I can't remember, some kind of thing that's like, what's this thing he's got sent in the post? It's a weird medallion or something. But the game is, even now, like you look at it now and you think it doesn't hold up amazing, but it's not terrible. Like this is a game that's like, I don't know what the maths is there quickly, 16, 17 years old or something. Yeah. And it's surprisingly decent in terms of what it tries to do. Like it's clearly got like the aged first person pre-modern 3D graphics look, but they do a lot. Like it's got the big mansion to explore, fully interactive stuff in terms of interacting with things. Puzzles.
The mansion is one of the bullet points that they like. No shade on the game, but like the marketing copy is hilarious because it says something along the lines of, actually I've got it up here, Realms of the Haunting, and it's features many unique and bizarre universes to explore from a modern age and a mysterious mansion. So basically now and a house.
Yeah. The thing I remember about this game is that it's like it's got no tutorialization at all. So if you don't physically read the paper manual, you are screwed.
A lot of games were like that at the time.
Also, I remember it being good.
Yeah, it's also
it was quite common.
Very. As I cut how old I was when I played it, I'm going to say like 13, 14. I can't remember exactly when let's say 14, and it's a game where I was definitely stuck. Like there's bits where like if you don't have exactly the right thing from a certain point, you're just screwed. Like you have to have the right stuff.
Is it one of those ones? Is it like a Sierra game where you can get to the end and having not picked up a rubber ball from
get to the end? But it's definitely one of those games where you basically have to have the right stuff, and it's not helping you in any way to do this. And it's that was fine then. These days, I'm not sure how well that would go down. Really, like
probably very badly. Yeah. I mean, like they engineered that out of the entire point and click genre because people complained about it so much.
Yeah, I think the FMV in this actually, for the time, and you think back to what was happening and like other FMV games and stuff. Like I was thinking like Seventh Guest and all that kind of horror, which were more. They were a bit more adventure-y, right? They were just like FMV, you walk around a house, whatever, and the FMV is there, and it's more of it. This has the actual like shooter mechanics, which are pretty solid. Like it's a good shooter. It's not like
it's a Quake era.
Like it's like that edge, the different like the Doom to Quake transition type period of shooters.
Yeah,
and it feels decent still, but the actual FMV is pretty good. Like it's not Immortality good. But for the time, and probably given what they were working with budget wise, and they were folding in like FMV into like sets for like for the game and stuff, it's not bad. Like it certainly holds up surprisingly well. Like, even if you just watch that intro, the CG stuff is very ropey now, and it looks, if you don't, I assume someone's upscaled it all to look like some amazing thing now. But it looks pretty good still. And the acting's not. It's a bit like. They're hamming up a bit like they always do.
Cannot believe you give me so much fucking welly for liking Babylon 5 and shit like that, and Babylon you're sitting 5, here insisting.
Babylon 5 is like, oh, we've rendered this on 8 million Amigas. It's amazing.
And it looked brilliant.
But this,
it still looks brilliant.
This was probably rendered on 1 Amiga, and it's still better. And this was not.
I shouldn't.
The FMV stuff is like actually like I don't know, like it's not the. It's not like Babylon 5 is a TV program. This is a game with video elements, and it is surprisingly decent. Like I wouldn't say you want to watch it as a film like maybe you would have in Immortality, but given what it's trying to do all around, I think it's pretty good. And certainly as a game, I think it's probably like, in terms of what is a traditional game, this is actually what I would say the best of all of these games. You move, you look around things, and you like explore. Like
well, on this topic, I just want to say I just wanted to so I bought up all 3 of these are on Steam, and all 3 of them are tagged in the FMV category. Now it's actually too early for Immortality to be flagged on the top rated, because of the way Steam works, they leave it a while. But Realms of the Haunting Steam average very positive out of 140 reviews.
It looks good. It looks
346
so good.
positive, 106 negative.
It looks great.
Immortality very positive on the Steam reviews, 180 positive, 41 negative. Contradiction, Spot the Liar, overwhelmingly positive. Out of 2,333 reviews, 2,571 are
That's
positive.
a cult Doctor Who
and
fan base.
and only 115
100%.
are negative. It is the 3rd highest rated FMV game on Steam, above Her Story.
Because of all the fucking daubers from Outpost Gallifrey.
Kickstarter, justify it. It's like when my son goes into a toy shop and spends all his pocket money on some shit thing, and I'm like, that's awful, but it's like, no, it's the best thing I've ever bought in my whole life. It's not. It's like,
it is. All 3 of these games are good. I'm just saying what I have. I'm not denying that it's a cult thing, but people who play this game and give it a chance overwhelmingly fall in love with it, despite its inherent crapness, because it's brilliant in so many ways.
I love how much Tom's son gets the piss ripped out of him on this podcast by Tom. That is 100% all the Doctor Who readies giving it the big one, because they want their, because that's the Doctor Who fan base. We're always hearing about how Doctor Who is like the most popular British drama ever made. Do you know anyone who likes it apart from you? I don't like Doctor Who. I think it's shite.
Well,
No, I do like Doctor Who, but not since like 2006 or something.
I like that we've got a 90s era FMV game in here. I was wondering before we started this, Kelsey, if you'd ever played Phantasmagoria, because that's like a horror.
No, I haven't, but I need to.
And it's very good.
I really need to. It's been on the backlog for the longest time.
That's a Roberta Williams joint, right? And she's amazing.
I'll tell you what Tom was talking about with how difficult these games often are with forgotten items and stuff like that. I recently started playing Broken Sword again. Me and my wife have just been playing it because, point and click games are actually quite fun to play in co-op, weirdly. And the hint system they added to that is such a lifesaver, because like it just gives you a little nudge every now and then when you're a bit stuck, and it just means that the game is enjoyable because you were never at a point where you've spent 40 hours combining every object with every other object and getting nowhere. Just gives you a little bit of, have you thought about looking in that drawer? Because let's face it, when things are difficult, I can't be bothered. That's why I don't like Dark Souls. Right, got to pick something now. Tom, I really like your suggestion. And I would give you 2 points for it if we had that kind of scoring system, but unfortunately we don't, so you get nothing. Okay. Alex, I love the look of your pick, and I love your enthusiasm for its ropiness, and it's got a lot going for it. But I just can't get past its association with that side of the Doctor Who fandom. Who I despise. Kelsey's pick, Immortality. It is the newest game on the list, but for the clarity of vision and how well it's executed, it's absolutely peerless in the genre. And to be honest, it's quite peerless in video games as a whole.
There we go. Modern bias. Modern bias again.
And one thing...
Newest game wins.
Immortality. And one thing that Immortality gets just absolutely nails, which you rarely see in video games, is that the interface is part of the story. So it's like video games, the video game. It uses this medium so effectively, despite being blended with a complete other medium. It's genius. It's brilliant. So it's got to be Immortality. But the other suggestions were really good as well. So I am slightly conflicted. But
I bet if you ask Sam Barlow, say, all right, do you really like Realms of the Haunting? I bet he says yes. It kind of spurred me on to make a career out of this. I bet he'd say that.
I bet he would say that. But I would argue that he went on to make a much better game than Realms of the Haunting, which is the point of the...
He owes his entire career to Realms of the Haunting.
To his credit, he's one of the few...
I could ask him, because Burns knows him. So
ask him and add it into this podcast and then apologise to me.
To his credit, he's one of the few people who's released a modern FMV game that doesn't star that geezer. So, you know, the contradiction man. So there you go. He must not have played that, for shame.
Brilliant. All right, so Kelsey gets another point, and we're going to have to talk these up at some point, because I've got no idea who's... is there a leaderboard? Has anyone got any idea who's got the most wins?
No.
We should get together a leaderboard for sure.
We absolutely need to, because like in my head is Alex is winning because Alex had that streak where he won like 5 in a row.
No, I don't.
But then he stopped sending the money. So all right, well, thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak to you again next week. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye. If you're a big fan of Orchid, it's got a treat coming up for you. Here it is. We've had some user feedback saying some people don't like this Orchid pattern. This is for you and all. That's the stuff. Some banging Orchids here. Drop us an email if you fancy that as a Christmas single.